Kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to February, sort of. It's the best of. We're doing 11 of them and we're doing it month by month, and tonight is February. Thanks so much for being a part of us. Really enjoyed the year. I'm very, very much looking forward to the break we're having right now as we speak to you. And I hope you really get to enjoy the content we're putting out over the next couple of weeks, because it is absolutely gold from our catalogue. Tonight, for example, Harry Tam will be joining us to talk about National's plan to ban gang patches. Mihingarangi Forbes tonight. An amazing interview from February of this year where she just embarrassed and took apart a young minister. You may have heard of him before, David Seymour. So we're going to be looking back to that interview that we looked back at in February. I think that's all. And just for a bit of fun, it's Christmas, so we need a Grinch. Sean Plunkett is very worried about people not using their birth name. Sean Plunkett. Sean Plunkett's worried about people not using their birth name and using their second name, as is he. If you weren't aware, Sean Plunkett's first name is Oliver Sean Plunkett. But when someone else does it, he's very worried about that. It's been such a good year. We've had so many good moments. Thank you so much for being a part of what we've done in 2024. Look forward to seeing you again live in 2025. But right now, let's get into tonight's show, and let's start off with Harry Tam talking National's plan to ban gang patches. And this conversation on this show happened in February of this year. I gave Harry Tam a call the other day if he'd come and talk to us and share some of his worldly experience and tell us what's going on from his side of the world. And he joins us right now. Harry Tam, good evening to you, sir.
Yeah. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Kia ora,
Thank
Harry.
you for joining us. Do you do that in the mornings? Do you kind of wake up and check your phone to see if Christopher Luxon's mentioned you the day before? Is it a daily thing for you?
No.
No. It might be a really silly question. In fact, let me just play 10 seconds of video here. This is Christopher Luxon the other day when he got asked about something you had said.
You move on to the gang crackdown as well, because yes, you campaign on it, great, you're delivering it, but I watched a piece on the news last night, and you've got and you're pissing off the right people, to be honest. Harry Tam, he's brassed off, he's calling it a laughable PR stunt that won't work. What do you make of that?
Don't care about Harry Tam, my friend. Don't care about Harry Tam. Irrelevant.
Okay. Do you care about the Māori?
Do you care
gangs?
Let's be clear about
that. Do you care about the Māori?
So Lloyd Burr says that he's pissing off the right people, meaning you. Why is it that Christopher Luxon uses you as this kind of light to shine upon? Like, you're the name that comes out constantly when he wants to talk about gangs and the problem with gangs. Why is it you? Why isn't he just talking more generally? Why has he made you a figurehead?
I guess maybe better that you actually ask him about that. My own belief is that, there's a whole game that's going on that these guys are playing, and essentially it's the same game that Hitler played. You've got to blame somebody, and you start off with people that are different from you, the Jews, the homosexuals, the communists, or whatever. And I think it's a similar game. Basically, he demonizes me because it suits that I stand out. I'm Chinese and I'm supposed to be a gang member and all the rest of it. And it attracts a certain amount of attention. And really, it's to distract the public from what really is going on with this government. I mean, this whole tough on crime rhetoric is really to create smoke and mirrors and so forth. Because, this whole thing about gangs. I mean, I jumped in, did a few figures today, and I looked at the New Zealand population in 2021 was 5.123 million, and in the same year it was supposed to be about 8,061 gang members. Now that works out to be a ratio of 1.5 gang members to every 1,000 New Zealanders. So the reality of anyone seeing a patch gang member is actually quite remote, unless you actually live in the hoods that they reside in, right? So you might see them driving past on a bike or in a car, occasionally out of shopping, but the reality of it, most people don't actually see gangs with patches. Where they see it is predominantly by the media. See, like every time there's a story about gangs, there's a patch, there's a gang member, there's televised videos, And then the politicians feed off that, and the media feeds off the politicians. So when you take a look at the numbers, in proportion to the population, it's relatively small. Yeah, sure, the numbers have gone up a bit, but overall, most New Zealanders probably don't see a lot of gang members with their patches on, or gang members full stop. So what we actually have here is what is known as a moral panic. So the whole issue is blown way beyond its proportion. And that suits this particular government because there's a whole lot of other stuff that's going on. For example, like, today doing away with the Māori health people, organisation, changing the RMA so overseas can come in and mine the iron sands of the Taranaki coast. Having pseudoephedrine sold in supermarkets because, if you go to your local Countdown or Woolworths now, there's a chemist there. And we all know that pseudoephedrine is the basis of making meth. And of course, we also know, the tobacco thing, which has been debated. And, and the politicians that are there have all had interest in them. As you know, I think Chris Hipkins was once a lobbyist for the tobacco industry. David Seymour and his connection with chemical what do you call them? Bloody medicinal companies,
I think you said. I think you said Chris Hipkins is a. I think you mean Chris Bishop, don't you? Chris Bishop was a lobbyist for the tobacco.
Sorry, Chris and Chris. but basically, there's a whole lot of stuff going on, and also if you listen to the rhetoric, it's sort of like tough on gangs, tough on crime, boot camps, and we all know the evidence is really clear. Boot camps don't work. But they don't care. I'm not going to talk to Harry Tam. I don't care. I don't care what they say. Yeah. So when you sort of do a discourse of the language that's being used, it's the language of people that have power. And the people that they don't care about are the people that don't have power. So, and it's the same language as the colonizers. We have power and we'll do what we like. Turn up there with a gunboat, pull out the muskets, and you can take whatever you want. And that's basically what's happening here. And all these other things are just sideshows to distract us from seeing through this government for what it really is. I don't buy it. And that's why they want to flog me all the time. Carry on. I've had it for 51 years. My skin's like bloody armour. Bring it on.
I'd like to ask you a real straight up question because you said, I wrote it down while you're saying it, because I'm supposed to be a gang member. Are you a gang member? I'm unclear on that. Are you actually a gang member, or are you just an ex-gang member? Are you gang adjacent? What would your status be in that world?
Oh, my status in that world, I think, is a respectful one. I mean, I myself, I don't dwell on it either way. I do what I do, and through what I do, I get a lot of respect. And people respect me for what I do because my whole kaupapa for the last 51 years is working with this group of people who have come from a horrendous background. Same thing. If we're talking about victims, these are the victims. These are the people that come from a background of being abused. It's amazing how quiet this Royal Commission has stayed silent for so long. I mean, you only have to read Dr. Elizabeth Thing's book on state care. This is the genesis of where our people come from. They're highly traumatized people that have never actually, no one believed them in the first place. Dr. Elizabeth Stanley, her book about people in state care, predominantly Māori, through the policies of urban drift, And when you don't look into the problem and understand it, you're never going to get close to a solution. I've spent a lifetime living with our people, and through that, we get to understand people, and we get to try and make changes from within. And I think we do pretty well for the very limited resources we have. In fact, we're lucky to have anything. I mean, and even when we do get resources, look what happens. This continual demonizing of Harry Tam. You know, our rehab, we have a 95% graduation rate, which is outstanding.
Is that through the hard to is that through the hard to reach
Yeah.
organisation that you run?
Yeah.
Yep.
We've got people that are 3 years clean now, got their children back from OT. You know, I mean, and our program is only an 8-week program, unlike some of the bigger ones that are better financed than us that run 8 to 12-month programs. You know, so that's what we do, and that's what I do. And what I try to do now as of age is to try and provide some thought leadership within our communities. And so whether I'm a gang member, whether I'm not a gang member, who the bloody hell cares? Is what you do, is how you behave. And that's the whole issue that I've always been on about. You know, let's not worry about what people wear or what their affiliations. Let's worry about how they behave and how we can change that behavior. And just taking their clothes off them, you know, I'm not sure whether that's the most intelligent thing to do. And I'm always so amazed that, you know, our political leaders, who are the leaders of our country, are so dumb. They think that if you take that cloth off that person, they're going to change.
Yeah.
Their behavior's not going to change.
Yeah.
And, you know, and to me, it's just, let's be intelligent about this. Let's not get out the old hates. I hate you and you hate me. And I mean, shit, there's enough of that going around already without us contributing to it. And that's what I don't do, you know, and I think through that I get respect. And it's not what I just say, it's what I do, what I practice, what I live every day. You know, you're in the trenches with our people, you know, you'd be amazed the phone calls I get every bloody day. You know, it's this and that. You know, can you help me, Harry? You know, dog's gone this, you know what? I get a whole range of stuff, and maybe I, you know, I've often thought about, you know, I should keep a log of it all. You know, and these are people that I don't even know. You know, most of the people on my Facebook page, look, mate, I don't know who they are. You know, it's not that they don't matter; they do matter, but I just can't remember that many. You know.
Yeah,
and people will approach me with all sorts of problems, and they're not all gang members. The majority of the inquiries are non-gang members. You know? But that's my life. That's what I do, and at the end of the day, I think when I was on that Jack Tame thing, I said, you know, I just want to be a good New Zealander. I just want to make a contribution to our country, and I just happen to work at one of the hardest ends of this whole spectrum of need. You know, and therefore it's just bullying, you know. You know, that's what it comes down to, this whole thing. It's like, you know, all those TikTok videos that National had to do during the election campaign, you know, cut through the chase. What is it? It's internet bloody bullying, right? Let's call them out for what it really is. It's bullying. And I've had it all my life.
I think the thing that jumps out for me, Harry, is with all of this rhetoric that's coming out of National, they absolutely don't want to engage with you or take any sort of feedback or anything that could actually help them accomplish something that they want to do, which is I guess less crime. Is they're completely ignoring the lessons of the past that go all the way back to where the mob came from. Those broken Borstal kids, and that was all tough on crime of their day, and all of these attempts to be tough on crime throughout the decades have done very little to minimize what the mob's been up to, what Black Power's been up to, what the other various MCs throughout the country have been up to. Is it's never worked. But then when there's an engagement, you know, I think there'll be a lot of people in your organization that acknowledges that it can be a hard, unpleasant life, and it's not great for families and stuff like that. I've seen mob members that are very devoted parents, but they know the life that they're in. But if we shun these people and we go, you're just not part of society, well, they'll go, we'll just continue doing our society as we've formed it. So if you were able to engage, let's say we put you and Christopher Luxon in a room,
a locked room,
5 minutes, and you say, hey, look, Chris, here's the secret to making progress with the mob, what would you say to him?
Well, I'd just share with him my experiences of working with the mob, and I'll share with him the successes that we've had working with people, to me, you learn if you want to learn. Hey? Your mind's got to be open, yeah? And that's what I said before, the whole dismissive of anything that doesn't suit their narrative comes from a power position. I have power, you don't, right? I'm the Prime Minister, I have power, I don't need to talk to Harry Tam, regardless of how sensible he is or, what he may have to offer. I just don't need to talk to him. And that's what I mean. That it's the neo-colonialist attitude, It's like and it comes down in his world, and he said it all prior to the election, one of his first public statements, the bottom feeders. And that's his persona. That's how he sees the world. There's the top feeders and the bottom feeders. And he's here to serve the top feeders, not the bottom feeders, despite what he says he's here to serve all New Zealanders, but he won't talk to some of us, right? So you can measure the genuineness in this guy's language, right? It is what it is. He's a top feeder.
I also have to point out the fact that he said that you're irrelevant.
Exactly.
But you sure as hell weren't irrelevant when you endorsed the Labour Greens. That seemed to be very worthy of note when you suggested to people that were listening to you that you better get out and vote and you better get voting for Labour and Greens. That certainly provoked a reaction from them.
And look how many Greens got on.
Yeah, good point.
Hey, it's not that our campaign wasn't successful. It was actually very successful. It's just that Labor didn't have any decent policies for people to vote for. I'm not even going to be popular with Labor now, am I?
Thinking about being locked in a room with Christopher Luxon. On that line, like if you were given like carte blanche to introduce some policy that would help in the area that you're working in, the hard to reach people, whoever they are, what kind of policies would you want to see implemented by whatever the name of the government is that would do something to help the group of people you're working with, the communities you're working with, rather than potentially harm them or isolating them?
Well, first and foremost, like I keep on saying, like myself, having been, a policy manager in government, when you develop policy, the first thing you have to do is have really clear problem definition. And we don't, right? And having clear problem definition comes about when you develop a really good understanding of the genesis of the problem that you're dealing with, right? And so and as you guys have already been on my company's website, you will see our framework. If you understand the literature around hard to reach, it always begins with engagement, right? And the reason why it starts with engagement, because basically social services aren't designed for this community. So if you think about the broader population of this country, the justice system, the social services, the health services actually work reasonably well, apart from the lack of resourcing or money or whatever, right? But the system in the main actually serves the bulk of the population. But there's a segment of the population that doesn't do so well, and you can call that group the disadvantaged, which you need to do a bit more. And that's like Māori service provision and all the rest of it. So you deal to the disadvantaged. And then you've got this relatively small group. It doesn't matter what you do, it doesn't work, right? And what that tells you is that the system is not designed for that community. So that's why when you look at the literature about hard to reach communities, it always starts with engagement. Why engagement? Engagement is getting to understand their needs and what works for them. And in our framework, we talk about hard to reach Māori communities, design, develop and deliver. So again, if you take a look at the Kahukura program, it wasn't your standard meth rehab program. It was a program that was designed by our own people and delivered by our own people, yeah? And that's why you get the successes. I mean, after 51 years of working in this field, that's what I've learned, and I believe it is a good framework to work from. And you know, those people that you're showing there, the majority of them, or a significant proportion of them, have now gone into tertiary training to be clinicians. Now, before Kahukura, they probably wouldn't have even considered it. We've got peer support workers who were the fire order at Kahukura. They're now enrolled in EIT to do certificates in addiction and so forth. Now, if it hadn't been for Kahukura, it would have just been another meth addict, probably in prison, probably involved in organised crime, probably involved in violence. But now he's got a purpose. He wants to be a clinician. He wants to be able to help his bros and help their families. Now, that's the stuff that will come out in the evaluation when we actually get it completed. But that's the sort of things that we do, you know.
So this is the thing that becomes incredibly frustrating. What I hear you saying is you are helping and pulling people out of the area that Luxon and his ilk are saying, these are the people we need to pull out of this area. That's what's frustrating, right? Because they're saying, so we're going to do that by, you know, doing boot camps, which as we all know don't work. The research shows doesn't work. They've tried it in New Zealand before, doesn't work. We're going to ban gang patches, like didn't work in Whanganui. In fact, Harry, we spoke to Chester Burrows just before he passed away, and he said very clearly to us that it's a great headline and it's terrible legislation. So this is the former police minister in the national government. You know, over in Western Australia, it's making some kind of impact, but also, you know, crime is moving to other parts of the country, and there's workarounds happening for it. So, what's frustrating to me is we hear this government talking about, you know, they're going to spend money wisely. We're going to look at every single one of your dollars and we're going to handle it wisely. We're an outcomes-based group. Well, they say they're an evidence-based group, but I don't know about that so much. And then there's people like you who are giving those outcomes, who they're going, why would I talk to him? It's incredibly frustrating. As someone who wants the best, I'll say the word outcome, me and Chewie always talk about what we want from legislation and in society is the best outcome. How do we get that best outcome? And it's like this government in the areas of gangs is going, well, I'm not going to look at the best. I'm going to do the way we like it. Not necessarily the best, just the way we like it. Because if we have to do it the best, then we have to acknowledge that perhaps some of those bottom feeders are the people that we need to rely upon to actually be the ones to do the work to get to the place we're telling society we're going to get to. It's completely frustrating.
I think it's actually worse than that. It's not only they don't want to know about it, they actually want to kill us off. You know, that was the thing that he was saying. You know, when I get in there, I'm going to rip up every gang contract. You know, so it's worse than not wanting to know. It's intentional, and that's what I mean. So when you go through all the rhetoric and all that, see it for what it is. It's about a distraction. They actually want more people in prison, right? They've made that really clear, tough on crime. Now, let's also understand every consecutive national government have always brought in private prisons. So this is where this is leading to, because our prison system as it is today is already over full. Yeah. The prison system cannot recruit enough people to work the prisons, right? So you change these laws so they become more draconian. The prisons are going to be absolutely chocker, right? So what's the answer? Oh, private prisons, yeah. I'll put money on it. That's where it's going, right? So
well, Seymour's already said 5,000 new beds. I think that's the number he mentioned before the election.
Yeah. So where's the money coming from for that? Who does it serve? 100%. Because private prisons are not, the money doesn't come, it comes from New Zealand, but it doesn't stay here. It goes to some overseas consortium, you know, some multinational bloody, you know, penal industrial complex somewhere, you know. And so when you start looking at all this, this is about asset stripping of our country in many ways. And if that's not colonization, what the bloody hell is, you know? We really got to see it for what it is. You know, it's like Dylan, you know, he said in the song, he said, you know, I might not be the master, but I ain't no fool, you know. And the thing is that, you might think you're some dumb gang member, but I can tell you now, I can fucking see through this bullshit, you know. And the sooner that the other people of this country see through it, the better.
Do you think that's likely? because it's unquestionable that National romped home this time around. So there's a pretty big hill to climb for people to see through this bullshit. And as much hatred as they put towards the left or the Labour government that's just gone out, that's a lot of bullshit to overcome before they see it for maybe what it really is.
Well, the danger to that is the breakdown of society, right? That's the danger. That's the game that we're playing here, And I think it'll be a terrible place if we ever degenerate to that. But, we've had this neoliberal consecutive governments for 30 years now. And in that process, it's dumbed New Zealanders down. We're taught not to know our history. We talk about this housing shortage, that we've been going on and on about. But if we understood where the housing shortage came from, it started when the white settlers came to New Zealand. Yeah. Māori didn't build houses for white folks, yeah. And then when you send 4 shiploads into Patron Harbour, then they're going to live. So we've had a housing shortage from the day of Pākehā settlement, right? And in 1933, I think it was, the first Labour government brought in state housing, because that's the only way you can provide enough housing, because the market will not provide. Market will provide housing for the rich folks, but it won't provide housing for everyone, right? So basically, it was market failure from the very beginning to where it is today. And if we don't understand the history and we keep on saying, do away with state housing, sell off the housing stock, that's why you've got so many people now sleeping on the streets, which I never saw when I was a kid growing up. That wasn't New Zealand the way it was when I grew up. And we've been dumbed down. We've been taught to not know our history. The whole concept of egalitarian society, the land of bread and milk and honey. Well, a lot of people don't have bread and they don't have honey and they don't have milk. We know that, but we don't understand why. Because over 30 years, that's like a couple of generations now that know nothing about having an award rate of pay that, you could live on. People, look, put it this way. When Samuel Parnell was a settler in Wellington and he refused to work more than an 8-hour day, right? Since that time to now, we've had IT, we've had, all this mechanisation. We're now into, AI, right? So if anything, our working days should be shorter and shorter. But people now are working 16-hour days and still can't live. Their kids have to miss out school to go to work to support the family. So what does that tell you? It tells you the people that owns the IT and all that are not sharing that wealth. It's going to a few, and the rest of us are left to live on the crumbs. That's what's actually happening. But because, you see, my grandkids will not know about award rates of pay. They will not know about trade unions and having to fight for your conditions. When you take a look at industrial accidents and deaths, they have been going up and up for 30 years.
Yeah.
But again, we forget that in my day, you had a safety inspector on the job who was a union person, and he could shut down that job if it was unsafe. You don't have that now. You don't even have safety inspectors inspect the sites. So, the sooner we start talking about our history and reminding everyone what we've lost, the better. But, oh, no, that's something that so-and-so Muldoon did or whatever. That's how they kill it off. They kill the discussion. They kill the conversation. And people like me that reminds people what we lost are a threat.
Mm-hmm.
We like to refer to Muldoon here as the New Zealand's last socialist prime minister. And it makes me feel yuck every time I say it. But the more I think about it, the more it's true. I think you're exactly right. On so many things, it all comes down to history. And when we chop our history up into little three-year terms, and then it's like, well, it's the last government's fault that did this. We can't do this because the last government did this. And we don't look at these long-term systemic problems. Labour are a bit better at it than National, but they are all, you're quite right to identify that the wheels came off when neoliberalism came in. You mentioned, people not being homeless. I remember the first time I saw a homeless person. It was 1998.
Wow.
And I had to go to a bigger city than I lived in to see that. Now in Dunedin, I see probably 3 or 4 homeless people every day. And it's just like, what's going on? There's people that don't have a place to live, or they can't afford them, or it's market rents, or social housing isn't an option. It's bleak. And I think you're exactly right to sort of point out that hey, look, if we're going to lock them all up at the same time from the same people that had a little experiment with Serco in prisons last time round, and they're talking about privatization of a whole bunch of things at the moment. Softly, we don't want to scare people, but we're definitely talking about it. I don't think it's crazy to go, these are warning signs. And if we look at the history, we see the arrow that it's all pointing towards. And I think it's time to make noise, and it's time to listen to alternative voices, and it's trying to listen to people in different walks of life that are going, hey, look, here is my experience. It's not irrelevant because it comes from a place of truth. And so I'm glad that you're sticking your head up against the trench line and just taking flack and saying what you have to say, because it's still valid. I don't care if you had a patch on your back.
Exactly.
That's what you know. It's important.
Yeah. And to me, what's wrong about caring for other people, eh? What's wrong with that, eh? There's something terribly wrong when we talk to people like they're bottom feeders, eh? Isn't there something wrong with that fucking tone and that language? Jeez, if I had my way, he'd get a fucking slap.
Careful, Harry. The headline tomorrow morning will be Harry Tam threatens violence.
What's a
Careful,
slap?
that one.
Well, I'll slap anyone that talks that kind of language.
I mean, there's a lot of people out there that just do not understand gangs, and because it's not in their orbit.
Well, they don't see them.
I keep on.
They don't live with them.
I keep on reminding people that this is a society that those people created, because the society that most of us have doesn't work for them, doesn't look out for them, comes down on them like a ton of bricks. It's that replacement family for a lot of people that had just a shitty, broken upbringing. And when you treat those people like the enemy, what options?
Hey, I didn't make this up, Like I say, go and read Elizabeth Stanley's book. She's, nice white middle class academic. She went and did the research. It wasn't something that Harry Tam just invented. But that's the reality of it. And of course, I guess it's acrimonious to some extent, because it highlights how our governments enable that to happen, and we were all part of that, the democratic process. And that legacy hasn't changed, as with OT. The latest ombudsman's report, it continues to go on. So we're now getting into the 4th generation of that dysfunction that's passed on and on and on, and with more prisons, more people, it will continue. So if the people of this country really believe what National's offering with all these extra laws that's going to solve the problems, I kid you not, it's going to make it damn sight worse, And I think people pointed out, prisons are the prime recruitment ground for gangs. So what, it just sort of beggars belief, really, doesn't it?
Harry, I think I know why Luxon has your name on his lips fairly often. Is because you're a threat. I mean, the way you're speaking, like I'd never met you before we started texting on the phone the other day, right? And I'm like, who is this guy? What's he all about? I want to know more. You come across as a smart, articulate, connected, clued in dude who's well researched and well read. No, not big scary mongrel mob man, but actually someone who knows their shit, knows what they're talking about, and maybe has some answers for some of these questions. So you're a threat. So he has to demonize you. the right has to demonise you because you could be a path forward that actually helps some of the problems that they're talking about but have no real solutions for.
Yeah, well, I don't intend to threaten anyone really. I mean, I just speak my truth, and like I say, I have fantasies of wanting to give certain people a slap, but I never do it.
We started this conversation.
Thanks for the head swell. It's grown already.
No, it's great. If you read the chat, mate, if you want the head swell, go back and read the chat afterwards. We started this conversation and got you on as well to talk about the legislation. So my last question for you is actually back to that. I want to know from your experience and from, being in the world, if the government does pass this legislation banning gang insignia, what will the gangs do? What will the outcome be from that, do you think?
I don't really know because like I say myself, I don't sort of place a whole lot of things on patches and all the rest of it. I guess it's like the frock for a reverend, isn't it? They wear a frock. That's what distinguishes their identity. And so when you start looking back again at the genesis of this, right? So when our people, whether it's the process of colonization that stripped Māori off their economic base, and then urban drift was the answer, bring them to the city to work in the industries. And then you had this process called the process of assimilation. So that's how Pākehā New Zealand was going to deal with Māori after you colonise them. We're going to turn the brown folk into just like white folk, and it backfired terribly. So in other words, the sense of identity was stripped away from these people. And when they become institutionalised, their identity was further stripped away. And I remember one time when I was organising a hui with the youth gangs in South Auckland, going back around about 2015, and Roy Dunn was the national president of the Notorious chapter, who I actually got to fund him to go and work with those youth gangs. And with this hui, we had Wali Homaha, the police come in and so forth. And I said to Roy, do you think it would be a good idea for us not to wear the patches and to get the kids not to wear their colours? And Roy looked at me, stared me in the eye, and he said, fuck, I will. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, that rag that you're talking about, that's all that kid's got. That's all he's got. And you're telling me to take it off him? Get fucked. See, that's what we don't know. When you've lost your identity and stripped away from you, you form your own identity. Yeah. That's what you have in terms of subcultures. Yeah. And so that subculture becomes the predominant culture in that person's life. So when you're talking about taking away patches and that, why did these gangs form? Why did they have colours and patches? Because their search for identity that was stripped away from them. And now we're going to strip them off them again, just like when they legislated to stop Māori speaking Māori. It's the same thing. It's colonisation all over again, right? For the same group of people, intergenerationally. And that's what
Harry,
it comes down to.
Harry, it's been an absolute pleasure having you tonight. Anytime you want to come and have a chat, mate, our door's open. Anytime. We'd love to talk to you anytime. And next time you're in Dunedin, you've got my number now. Give us a call. We'd love to catch up.
Yeah, well done.
Hey, g'day again, team. Hope you're enjoying the best of in this Christmas New Year break period, the best of BHN 2024. Just wanted to remind you as well that the merch shop is open during this time period. One of the ways we support ourselves and pay a few bills is obviously through the merch that we sell. We are sending out merch all the way through this Christmas period. So if you want to head to bhnshop.nz, you can see that there are some Chewie Fufu shirts there, Chewie blowing his fufu, some Nicky No Boats product there, both t-shirts and hoodies, buffer gear there as well, t-shirts and hoodies, and also the pattern Chewie BHNs. The other thing that's become quite popular in this last wee while is the sticker range we've got as well, which mirrors the merch on the t-shirt range that we've got. Again, we will be sending out merch during this Christmas New Year period. So if you order it, it will be on a courier or on the post or whatever you call it, certainly within a few days, and we'll get it off to you. You'll also find a few specials on that for limited stock. The stock, especially in the hoodies, is limited. It's actually limited in everything, but more so limited in the hoodies. So if you head to bhnshop.nz quickly to make sure you secure what you want from the merch that we have currently going. Thanks for supporting us through 2024. Let's get back to some more of the best ofs.
So this massive revelation that Mihi Forbes at birth obviously chose the name Joanne, and then at some point decided that she wanted to reflect more of her Māori upbringing by giving herself a Māori name. Wow, what crack journalism from Sean Plunkett.
You mean Oliver? Oliver Sean Plunkett, as someone says in the chat, eh? Oliver's his first name. Oliver's his first name. Doesn't use.
What's Oliver's first name?
Oliver Sean Plunkett.
We have to call him Oliver from now on. Old Ollie Plunkett. Ollie's too rad. It reminds me of skateboarding. But look, here's the thing. He's about that far off from bringing in some sort of blood quantum argument that Mihi's not Māori enough. You know, what percentage of you? Mihi's father's Māori, her mother's not. And people go, that's not enough. The accepted thing is, if you can whakapapa Māori, you are Māori. That is it.
Yep.
Like it's not a question whether you look Māori, you have blonde hair and green eyes. There's plenty of Māori down here in the South Island that have very white skin and blue eyes. They're still whakapapa Māori.
Mm.
That's it. That's all that needs to be. And when people make that argument of are you Māori enough, when someone like Mihi does more to show that she's Māori, like take a Māori name, like get moko, like speak more reo, then suddenly they're a plastic Māori and they're not Māori enough. That's bullshit.
Yeah.
It's just that people don't like seeing it, and she's a woman journalist, and Ollie hates that. He hates women journalists more than anything.
Kia ora again, team. Thanks for sticking with us. Hope you're enjoying the best of 2024 as we take a bit of a break through this 2024-2025 Christmas New Year period. Very, very important people to us from our audience are our patrons. Our patrons help pay the bills, especially through this Christmas period where we're not doing as much merch and we're not getting super chats and stuff. It's the people who are our patrons who get behind us and who help us pay for all the stuff that you're doing and watching right now, all the technology we're using, all the internet we're using, the power for what we're doing. It's all based on what the patrons do. If you are interested in being a part of what we do, patreon.com/Big Hairy News, patreon.com/Big Hairy News is how you do it, as we aim to continue bringing you this independent news network right the way through 2025 and beyond. Thanks for your support, and however you do it, even if it's just watching and sharing, it's really important to us. And let's get back to the best ofs. I think we're going to start with Mihingarangi Forbes and her interview with David Seymour at Waitangi. Now, I've got a clip that's about 3.5 minutes, a clip that's about 3.5 minutes, and a clip that's about 3 minutes. So we're going to get some big chunks. And Chewie, you can Sam C to this thing and shout out or pause the thing there if you want me to pause it. But let's have a listen to this conversation. The first part of the conversation is speaking specifically about the treaty referendum bill.
The bill, everyone's been talking about the Treaty Principles Bill. How far have you got with drafting it, and any more insight into what it might look like or sound like?
Well, I think you've seen from the Policy Act released a long time ago that we have an idea that the principles should be based on the actual tiriti itself. It should talk about the government having the right to govern.
I think, I didn't quite understand the pronunciation. He said the tiriti. I think he got mixed up between, no, I'm not mocking him, but I think he got mixed up between saying tiriti and treaty, because he said the tiriti. So I think that's all that was, if anyone else picked up on it.
I know there's people that say Ngāpuhi didn't cede sovereignty. What they don't explain is how the world is actually going to work when you have two legal systems, two justice systems in very close proximity to each other? The answer is it can't. Number two, that we have tiroranga tiratanga. Now, I know there's people who say when, they said for New Zealanders, everyone thought that was Māori, being the New Zealand people of that time. But I think as people...
Which is pretty clear that's what it was. I mean, they weren't signing something in 1840 to say, the influx of Norwegian tourists or residents to come here in the year 2100. I mean, who else is it talking about? It is the people of the time. And this is one of the things, another part of the conversation, I didn't actually load it up. I did, but we couldn't have everything. He talked about ACT being the party that kind of demonstrates Tino Rangitirotanga better than anybody else, because he has a definition for it, talking about property sales and self-determination and this kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, Chewie, if it's not Māori who they're talking about in 1840, who were the signatories to the treaty and Crown, then who the fuck is it? Like, is there any treaty you write today that in 150 years from now is going to be, it includes all those people as well? Of course it does. All those people, they're included. Well, it's nonsense. I think it's just so easy to poke holes in his conversation. I don't know why people fall for it. Probably because they want to fall for it, Chewie, and they have a perspective in mind.
Absolutely. He's talking to his audience and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
He's not talking to anybody that knows the history. And you're right. It's like there's a reason why the US Constitution has amendments, right?
Yeah.
Because they come up with an idea and they write it in. And that makes their constitution somewhat a living document. But we don't have that. And I'm not suggesting that we do.
Well, why not? I can't even think of anything.
I honestly don't know the answer to that question.
Has that conversation ever happened though?
No,
like amendments to the treaty to reflect better 20. Just thinking.
The treaty is not a constitution, though. A constitution is a guiding document, right?
Right. Yeah.
They all wrote down. They go, right, this is what's going to be important to our country. And first of all, we got to own people. Whereas a treaty is not that. It's not it's a founding document. It's not a guiding one.
Right. Yeah,
so I don't think you could put an amendment in it, even if you wanted to, which is why I think this is why ACT is putting so much focus on reframing it.
Yeah.
If you take them at their word, if you dig into it a bit, like many are at the moment, I think it is just a way to sow even more division and drive a bigger wedge between the Indigenous population of this country and the non-Indigenous population of this country, because that always fucking works. It's worked for them in this election, and hopefully it'll work for them in the next one. I'm sure that's what they think.
All right, we'll keep going. Here we go. Well, where's my little mouse gone? There it is. Oh, there it is. There. Found it.
On aeroplanes into Auckland Airport, even this morning. We need
hang
to
on,
ask.
Hang on. Settlers had nothing. Settlers had nothing. This was an arrangement, a treaty, a property contract, if you like, between the Crown on behalf of settlers and rangatira Māori. So to then assume that settlers, the ones that arrived on a plane not that long ago, have rangatiratanga, it just doesn't work when you read the words of the treaty.
Well, first of all, it certainly wasn't a property contract, that's for sure. It was a political compact.
The Article 2 is a contract about property and rights and fisheries and land and rivers.
It was a political compact that, among other things, said that your property rights would be upheld. That's totally different from a property contract. I think we've just got to be clear on these things. But on the other hand, here's my question. If you believe that the treaty in Article 2 did not extend tiroranga-tiratanga to all people who live in these lands, then you've got to explain how you're going to have a functioning state with a different political status for different people. And I don't think...
I've never heard him explain what that means. Like, he keeps saying there will be different rules and a different status. I've never actually heard him explain. Can you compartmentalize that for me? Can you explain what that means? How does the treaty in its current form give different people different status? Like, I've never heard that pushback from anybody. And I'd like to ask him. I've made the decision. I mean, I don't think they'll come on, but I'm going to send him an email this week to see if he'll come and have a chat with us, because I've never heard him go to, okay, what does that mean? You know, this is a great thing in interviewing. It's a kind of a theatre sports game. And then what? And then what? And then what? So what do you mean? Demonstrate to me right now that the current way we do things, some people have a different kind of political status, level, whatever word he used in, than others. And because I've never heard it be unpacked any further than just a bumper sticker, Chewie.
It's really playing into, like, I mean, do you even call it a racist dog whistle anymore? It's a fucking foghorn at this point. It's playing into this thing that Māori are privileged. They have more rights than you do. They get to go to university more, and they get all of this money from the government. And Māori are obviously getting it over on you. I think that I hate it. Yeah. I thought we had put this to bed. I thought we were seeing the benefits of everything that we've done in the last 40 years. And he wants to unwind it all. He wants the white people that he's talking to see the enemy as Māori. And it's just, what is the, like, if you take him at his word, it's bad. Yeah. If you go further than that, it's even worse. Like, I just can't ignore the noise around David Seymour and ACT and Atlas and what Atlas have done in other countries with other issues around Indigenous rights in a colonial setting, in a colonial government setting. They did it in Canada, where David has spent some time. They did it in Australia with The Voice, and now they're fucking with us.
And I'll say this, I've said this before, this is just an opinion. I don't have any evidence for this yet, but I'm looking around. I wouldn't be surprised if Atlas is doing, back in the 80s and stuff, New Zealand used to be pretty much the first to get a bunch of technology. Like, we were the first to use FPOS in the world because we're a very good testing market, because we're we have no countries on our borders. We're a particular size that's big enough to be able to test things out. So for a long time, we were like the testing pot for the rest of the world. And I get the sense, at least, that the Atlas money that's coming into the country at the moment, funding various outlets and helping various outlets, is very much a testing ground for what's happening in America in November of this year. Yeah. Testing the messaging, trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work.
We'll see later on in this interview, but just how defensive he gets when Atlas is brought up.
Yeah.
Like, instantly the walls go up.
Yeah. I'm not.
But I think everybody should be worried about foreign interference in our country. And, right from the ground up, it seems that this is what ACT has been here to do.
When it comes to Atlas, I'm not sure whether it was Macbeth. Anyway, Shakespeare said, methinks the lady doth protesteth too much. And that's normally, we take that in the modern context to go, you're reacting pretty badly to this, sir or madam. Why are you reacting so badly to this? Why are you pushing back so hard? Do we need to know more? Certainly the vibe. Let's get to the end of this clip, shall we?
Yeah. There's a good example of that. There's lots of disastrous examples, but I think there's a good example of that anywhere in the world. I think a much more practical reading
There are
of the
treaties
treaty
all
and
over
a
the
legitimate
world.
reading.
There are treaties all over the world where one country gets some set of rules and then another country get another set of rules. They're just different privileges, and they've been signed up in a treaty. So there's absolutely
not within a nation state. You're being highly misleading.
So
give me an example.
It's a treaty, so it's a group.
No,
there's two partners in the treaty. One's the Crown, right? And the other one, a rangatira. So
there's nowhere else in the world where a society functions successfully having two standards of citizenship. You go to Malaysia, you go to...
I guess he's being truthful. You think about America when it comes to money, those with money and those without money, doesn't work, does it? The top 1% and the let's say the way they use the justice system versus everybody else. So I'm sure the next thing after David Seymour's done with this, he's going to be off on the let's make sure everyone's treated same no matter what money they've got or not got. I think that'll be the next part, won't it, Chewie?
Yeah, no war but class war, right? If he wants to talk about people with different rights and duties and different privileges and that sort of thing, surely he's talking about rich and poor.
Yeah,
that's something that everybody can get behind, right?
Yeah.
Is that what he's doing, Pat?
Don't think so.
Is it?
I don't think so.
No,
No,
he's
so.
underwritten by some of the richest families in New Zealand.
Maybe.
Right,
right.
Gotcha.
All right.
South Africa, you ask people who've tried this. In a nation state, you have citizenship, you have a set of rights as a citizen. I call them human rights. And they have to...
I call them human rights. You may not know that term, but I call them. Does that sound Trumpian? I like to call it human rights. Like, honestly,
big brain.
And honestly, when it comes to the Atlas Network, he goes, here we go. Exactly what Trump does when he gets a question he doesn't like. Exactly. I call them human rights. They indicted me.
To be equal for all people by virtue of being human.
They're not two standards of citizenship. It's just Māori get to retain the contract that they signed with the Crown at the time. So, you keep talking about two races, but it's actually the Crown and Ngā Rangatira Māori, and it's not. It's as Annette Sykes says, isn't it? That she said it's different rights rather than special rights.
Oh, different rights. Okay, that's a nonsense. You either have the same rights or you don't.
And that point, David Seymour just echoes exactly the thing we've always talked about when it comes to David Seymour. I wrote it out as a quote. You either have the same rights or you don't. So what he's telling the country, if not the world, is that we should all have the same rights. But what he's putting into legislation is only to make the category of race have the same rights. Like, okay, cool. Let's go with that, right? That you either have the same rights or you don't. We're going to do that with age from now on. No more under 13s rugby. Can't, we've got to be treated the same when it comes to that. Are we going to do the same for religion? Catholic Church, no more male priests. Sorry, mate, you can't stop that. Are we going to do that for sex? That's a big one for him. Are they going to do that for disability? None of those special car parks anymore for people who are disabled. See, he doesn't want to have the same rights or you don't. He wants to dog whistle to his voters, his supporters, and say, we can squash these brown people and make it better for us. That's what he's saying. I almost want to be generous and say whether he realizes it or not, but I think I've gone past that. That's what he's saying, because he doesn't want everyone to have the same rights. He just wants everyone to have an appearance of the same rights when it comes to race, Chewie.
I just want to jump on the thing, it's human rights. You might have heard of it from David Seymour.
I don't think he quite said you might have heard of it. He said, I call it human rights. I call it human
Definitely
rights.
Implied.
Yeah, okay.
Considering David Seymour wants to get rid of the Human Rights Commissioner,
Yeah.
that's elephant tears to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. All right, let's keep going on it, shall we? I want to put up a couple of things. The first is now in January of this year, there'll be a date there somewhere, won't there? I can't even see where. There we go. January the 30th of this year, I put out this tweet. If people were wondering if the Atlas Network is connected to ACT, this is from a 2021 speech that David Seymour made. It says this, quote, then the Global Index of Economic Mentality was released in November, quote, by my old friends at the Atlas Network, end quote. Atlas is an umbrella organization for free market think tanks all over the world. So that is from a speech from David Seymour in 2021. So we know he knows who they are. The question is, are they involved with them now? And this is the point, I guess, Chewie, where methinks the lady doth protesteth too much. So they're talking about The Voice, and they're talking about interference in the messaging from The Voice coming specifically from the Atlas Network. Let's say. And remember what I just said, when Trump gets asked a question he doesn't like, he literally does say, oh, here we go, to the reporter. Like, here it comes, word for word. So you are seeing someone, whether it's a learned behavior, a suggested behavior, or he's just literally turning into it, who is not only looking at Trumpian type policy, but is beginning to speak Trumpian. So here's the story.
And those Indigenous Australians signed with the Crown at the time. So, you keep talking about two races, but it's actually the Crown and Ngā Rangatira Māori. And it's as Annette Sykes says, isn't it? That she said it's different rights rather than special rights.
Oh, different rights, okay.
Oh, sorry, that's the wrong spot. We'll start that again. That was such a good build-up I gave it too. It's there.
And those Indigenous Australians are now warning Māori that the same groups are behind this referendum. Are they, do you think?
Well, if you're about to go into the new Pizzagate of the left conspiracy theory, then I'll be real disappointed.
What's that, the Pizzagate?
at some crazy conspiracy theory that Trumpists have in the US.
The campaign in Australia had links to the Atlas Network, a
Here we
network
go.
of think tanks
Oh.
which promote individual liberty
Shields
and
up.
free enterprise.
Shields up.
And it said that the network pushes opinion pieces in favour of free speech. Do the ACT Party have any links or connections to the Atlas Group?
No.
Okay.
Oh, they
any
don't.
links- but any links or
Oh, they
connections?
don't.
Yeah. So they're his old friends, but this is where I guess you want to go one step deeper. What do you mean no connections? Maybe no funding, maybe funding for groups that support ACT. You know, so that never gets pushed harder,
Yeah.
but he says no, they don't. Yes, Chewie.
Would you consider that if the people that founded ACT, the New Zealand Party ACT, were the same people that founded the Atlas Group?
Oh, interesting.
What if those people were the same people? Would
Yeah,
would
they'd-
that be links?
There'd be some.
Would they be
possibly.
links, Pat?
Yeah,
That
they'd be
would
linked.
probably we probably need to look at the Gibbs family then.
Right.
Former, I think they might even still be the chairperson of the ACT Party.
Okay.
We'll circle back to this, I think.
We'll circle back to that. We'll keep going with the interview, talking about the Atlas Network, and yeah, I know people in the chat are already saying this as well. Just stop and think about David Seymour, who was talking about the disrespect paid to Nicole McKee at Waitangi, and he kind of mentioned, you know, to a female on the marae, and hear the tone that he speaks to this journalist with, this incredibly well-respected, award-winning journalist, respected by societies the world over.
Have you spoken or taken advice from them or any group associated with them about the treaty? So, you know, recently...
I can't believe you're doing this. I've read about this conspiracy theory and you're actually running it, but that's cool.
Well, no, I'm just trying to understand it because we went to Australia and we
Looked up the
analysed
conspiracy
the Yes campaign over there, and we spoke with Indigenous people about their fears about what would happen in the referendum. And so when you consider, you know, actually you and I spoke about it. You said that you had met Lord Hannon and then the TPU.
For people who don't know, Lorne Hannon was one of the sort of originators and he pushed really hard the Brexit situation. He was one of the guys at the early stages of Brexit and wanted to see the UK leave the EU. So just to anchor that for you.
The taxpayer union had invited you to come along, and he spoke about this treaty and the possibility of a referendum. So isn't that in fact, you know, these movements and these groups talking about our referendum?
What, going along to meet someone who's a famous figure in world politics.
What did he come to New Zealand for?
I have no idea, but I was really
Well, you were there.
I was really pleased to have dinner with him.
What did he come to New Zealand for? I have no idea. He was at the speech explaining why he came to New Zealand, and his defence is, I have no idea.
I mean, he's
Shields up,
he's
brain
world
off.
famous as a politician. You get to meet him, hear what
But
he's
you
got to
went
say.
along to that function to listen to him where he talked about the Magna Carta and the treaties. And
Oh my God, the Magna Carta.
he did. And
Scandalous.
well, I'm not saying that that's scandalous. I'm just saying this is what he talked about. I listened to it online because it was posted by the TPU, and so he talked about that, and he talked about the danger of the misinterpretation of treaties and what they meant. And and he also says what you say is that the judiciary is getting too involved, or they're making the interpretation of it is too wide.
You do know that people have had concerns about judicial activism all over the world for all sorts of reasons for hundreds of years, right?
No, I don't.
You're trying to, and you're trying to say that this is somehow some crazy conspiracy theory. I mean, come on.
No, I'm just asking the question. I'm asking whether you know if there's any kind of connection. So you're answering there is no connection?
I've told you.
Can you imagine if one of the leaders of the Greens or one of the, met up with, I don't know, one of the figureheads of Black Lives Matter or of, I don't know if there is a person, but of Antifa or something. And the excuse that was given that they gave was, just meeting a famous person, and interesting to hear their thoughts. Can you imagine the kind of rhetoric that David Seymour would come out with? Now, was there anything untoward about that dinner? We don't know. We can't say. We're not going to do it. But could you just imagine if it was the other way round? Would he be like, well, they can have dinner, that's fine. Or would he be like, yeah, crosses, burn the witch? Where would he be on this? I think we all know where he'd be on that. But, this is the hypocrisy within politics. It's that, one rule for thee and not for me, which they pretty much all do, but the right seems particularly good at doing it, especially at the moment, Chewie. Is there something you want to drop in, or can we finish the last?
Oh,
this has only got 30 seconds.
Yeah, keep playing it. I'm just getting pages and pages and pages.
Okay.
There's no connection there.
Cowboy.
I'm just disappointed in you for picking up a known conspiracy theory that several people have sent to me, and I never thought I'd get asked about it by you, but hey, you go.
Well, so my role is to ask questions on behalf of other people, and
also work out what's quality information, what's not. But anyway, you go.
Well, Mata is a program that looks at things through an Indigenous lens, and so when we have discussions and talk to people in Australia...
I don't think being Indigenous is an excuse for low quality debate. I mean... No.
What a piece of shit.
Yeah, low quality debate,
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So I'm not going right now. We do have one more clip to come out, and it's given me more of a understanding of who he is and why he's doing this. But also, there's a huge gap in his ideology. It's about, because we all know this, that act is about the individual rights versus like community rights. But what I've realized whilst watching this is a lot of this is now comes down to him talking about individual law, not kind of community law. But there's a massive gap in that conversation that he's also not picking up on, which I'll explain after the next clip. But you go, Chewie. I know you got stuff.
Oh, look, I was going to... Actually, maybe we should roll on, because it's kind of a big unpack.
All right. Well, let's get rolling.
We're going to... Yeah.
This is the last part of the conversation I'm going to play for you. And this is a conversation about the average being a way to group needs. Like when we're looking at research, when we do that kind of stuff, people talk about the average, the average Kiwi, the average Māori, whatever it is. And he has a really strange pushback. I should have counted them, but I think he probably repeats the word average about 20 times in this. That might be a bit too much. Like whilst Mihi is talking, he's going average, average, average. Yet that's when you're doing research amongst a group, whatever that group is. Let's talk about NBA basketball players. You do go, well, the average height is, or you go, the average salary is. And this seems to be the thing that I've learned about David Seymour and ACT, is whether he's using it in good faith or not, he is so determined to talk about the individual and not the average. That's the hang up where he can't say this is okay for Māori. There's a huge gap in that. We'll talk about it afterwards, but that's what this part of the conversation is about.
Yeah, well, can we just finish this point? Because you say average matters. Actually, what average does is it groups people together by race. It ignores the people who are of a different race but also have need. It ignores the people who are of your target race but actually doing very well. And that's why I say it's important that we start looking at people based on their need, based on their individual characteristics. If you want to categorize people by race, if you think the most important characteristic of a person that you're going to do your averages by is race, then by definition, you're a racist. You're a person who thinks that race matters more than anything else. So it's actually an important point. Second issue, we have massive amounts of...
The other thing to understand is David Seymour doesn't know what a racist is. So that's the other thing to learn from this clip.
Need and disadvantage in education. I'm responsible for partnership schools, kura horua. We've talked about that extensively. I'm responsible for regulation. I believe that making it easier to build a home in this country is going to do more for
Look at
Māori
Mihi's
than
face.
anyone
You
else.
wait till you see what she says
On
next.
average,
That's why her
it's
face is
Māori
looking
who are
shocked.
further behind. And we have massive amounts of need and disadvantage in education. I'm responsible for partnership schools, kura horua. We've talked about that extensively. I'm responsible for regulation. I believe that making it easier to build a home in this country is going to do more for Māori than anyone else, because on average it's Māori who are further behind in housing stats.
Coming back to when you referred to me as racist in health.
I didn't refer to you. I said anyone who believes that the first and best way to categorise human beings is by race, by definition, is putting race before other characteristics.
Here's another thing for him to unpack. The first and best way. I've never heard anyone looking at stats say that this is the first way or the best way to group someone. It's a way. If you are researching Māori health needs, then you are, by definition, grouping Māori. And if you are looking at Māori health needs, by definition, there is going to be an average outcome. But this is this language that you use. If you say it's the first way and the best way, I don't think said nobody ever anywhere. But this is his response, right? That he's trying to sell the idea, whether he's just trying to, scare people more. He's trying to sell the idea that that what the government's trying to do and what the woke neckbeards are trying to do is saying the only way you can categorize people and the best way to do it and the first way is by race. That's the message he's putting out to his supporters. Ooh.
Beings is by race, by definition, is putting race before other characteristics.
To be clear, I didn't categorise. I didn't. What I said, because what you have to do is that when you've got problems like rheumatic fever in your country, you have to work out how to deal with them.
Yeah,
you have to first find them. You have to measure the problem, and so by doing that, you group people. So when we look at the data, the scientific data for health, we can see that Māori children are overrepresented in some of those stats.
Yeah,
so again,
but there may be other reasons for that. It may be poor housing. It may be living in rural areas away from healthcare. So I'm saying is let's target the actual causes. Because if it's poor housing, you might find that there's Māori and good housing that don't have the problem, and there's non-Māori and bad housing that do have the problem, and we can design a policy to intervene and actually fix it rather than.
And again, you and I
both
know that it is Māori when we use the measurement of scientific data. It is Māori again on average, whatever.
Yeah. Well, no, you haven't.
No.
Okay.
So again, no. Yeah, sure. Hang on. When we use the scientific data, we know that it is Māori that more than likely has poorer housing. So. What I'm asking is, where are the policies to start closing the gaps?
Well, first of all, saying scientific doesn't make you right. Second of...
Do you hear that? How's that as a pitch to his people?
Insufferable twat.
This has got 40 seconds, but did you get this? Saying scientific doesn't make you right. Does that evoke any memories back to a certain, Wellington lawn for a good 20-week period or 20-week period?
What I'm asking is, where are the policies to start closing the gaps?
Well, first of all, saying scientific doesn't make you right. Second of all, we talk extensively about our housing policy. We've got a huge amount of work that we need to do there. We need to make it easier to fund and finance infrastructure. We need to replace the Resource Management Act, use something that's based on property rights instead of the council. And this is what I would say is colonisation, the council making a plan for the whole district about what you can do. So, there's just two ideas, and then you get into building materials. It needs to be seriously deregulated. At the moment, we pay too much for building and materials. We don't innovate in the way, this is easy. We talk about this stuff all the time. There's no question that we will make it easier to build homes, and if we don't, then it won't be for having good policies or trying very hard.
There we go. Now, I've got a few reflections on this, Chewie, but I've been hogging the limelight. Do you want to get to your bits and bobs?
I'm all for David Seymour deregulating building materials. Absolutely nothing can go wrong in a wet, changeable country that's prone to earthquakes. It's fine. It's probably going to be fine. Look, there's talk about Atlas. There's so much talk about Atlas, which is, of course, the Pizzagate of the left, apparently. Now, of course, just let's put a grounding on that. Pizzagate was a Trump conspiracy theory that somehow Hillary Clinton was running a pedophile ring out of the basement of a pizza shop in Washington, D.C.
Just for accuracy, I think probably more a QAnon than a Trump. I think it came through QAnon.
Okay.
Yeah, I think. But anyway, keep going.
That Venn diagram is a complete circle.
It's a circle,
yes. Good point. Okay, so that was completely unfounded, proven to be unfounded. That pizza shop didn't even have a fucking basement, right? And he is trying to equate that ludicrous, literal conspiracy theory with people pointing out, hey, do you have links with this very real organization overseas? And he goes, no.
That you've been connected to in the past, that there's photos of
Yep.
you being at the things that you've cited
Yep.
in your speech.
So there are levels and levels. Let's peel the onion, right? First things first, there are photos of David Seymour at an Atlas event in 2008. He also wrote an essay writing competition and got a trip to Tokyo. This is all mentioned in Atlas's websites and stuff like that. This is while he was working in Canada for an Atlas-based think tank that may have laid the groundwork for some very anti-Indigenous policies that were floated in the Canadian system, right? So that's one level, a fucking straight line pointing at David Seymour. Let's dig a little bit further. Let's look at one of New Zealand's richest families, the Gibbs family, and Alan Gibbs. Let's talk about Alan Gibbs. Why is he important? So, Alan Gibbs is a New Zealand-born businessman. So that's a good start, right? Alan made a shit ton of money when we deregulated, when the government started selling off assets. He made his money, a massive, fucking obscene pile of money, by buying telecom. Now, telecom started stacking up money all through the 80s by running on infrastructure that the government built and never innovating, locking it down until competition came in. He has been behind the founding of ACT and also the founding of a particular organization, the Centre for Independent Studies. The Centre for Independent Studies founded the Atlas Network, and his daughter, Dame Jenny Gibbs, is the current chairperson of the Atlas Network. So there's that. There's the very easy link to David Seymour. It goes right back to the founding of ACT. We should be concerned about this. It isn't a conspiracy theory. It isn't based on smoke and mirrors and mystery basements. It's fucking right there. It's documented. This is something we need to be concerned about. The Gibbs family have donated untold donations to ACT over the years. In the last round of public records of how much they donated, Jenny donated $155,000 on her own. Now, if we want to talk about all New Zealanders should be equal, maybe we should talk about that. Maybe we should talk about how much influence money gets you in this country, I should say. Maybe we should be concerned. If that's what's on the record, 3 separate transactions of $50,000, that's fine. What else? Is she giving money to other people to donate? Is David Seymour on the phone going, thank you very much, Dame Jenny. What would you like me to do today? You want me to spark off a race war as a distraction for other things? Okay, let's do that. Money needs to get out of our political system. If he wants to talk about the things that we can see overseas that don't work, it's money in our political system.
Yeah. Yeah. Preach. Preach.
The other nice little tidbit I like about Dame Jenny Gibbs is she is a prolific funder of the arts, but only art that she likes. So when this is a few years ago, but when she found out that an artist was, I think it had something to do with Nikki Hager after the Dirty Politics book came out, she pulled all of her funding.
Wow.
Because she didn't want anything to do with Nikki Hager. Now, of course, ACT, I assume Atlas, they're all about free speech, right?
Yep.
It's funny. There's links all over the place. All the people that we've been talking about. Atlas has links to ACT. Atlas has links to the Free Speech Union. It's funny how the Free Speech Union only brings over vile people. It's not equal. Like I see them bring over Graham Linehan, because we need to hear from him.
Here's David Seymour at one of the events. There he is there.
Yeah.
This is the
literal
Atlas events.
Apparently he was writing a song about property rights, and I can only imagine what a fucking abortion that was. I think here in New Zealand we're kind of naive when it comes to our politics, right? Here we are, all the way tucked away down here. Nobody really knows what we need to, where we are, so we don't need to think about this thing. We think more about the Chinese influencing our political space than we think about US right wingers or our own right wingers with a big old pile of money. Yep. We talk about this a lot.
Yep.
I can't buy the level of influence that Jenny can and her dad can. A family dynasty influencing our political landscape over the space of 40 fucking years.
Yeah.
How can I have that sort of influence? I can't. They can't.
Let me share to you as well my other revelation from this thing. Talking about, it's very clear, and I know if we said this out loud, we always knew this, that David Seymour, an actor about individuality, not community, individual rights. That's why he kept going average. But what about the rich Māori who aren't average? Here's the little thought I had today. This is the party that wants to cut regulation. This is the party that wants less government spending. But at the same time they're saying that, they want everything to be means tested. In other words, they want to treat every single person in the health system as an individual. Because remember, he's not about averages, because what about those who aren't in the averages? Where do they fall to? What he's actually saying is, let's treat every single person as an individual within the health system and provide for the ones who need it. Look, you know what? I'm okay with that, but do you know what it means? Your bill, your payment for the health sector has just increased 50-fold. Because one of the reasons that we do averages is the same as anything, and it's not good nor bad, it's just the way it is. Some people fall through the gaps because of averages. It's not the best way to do it. If we literally went, let's talk about rheumatic fever, and went and found out what every single person needed and then targeted them, that would actually be great. But it would be hundreds of billions of dollars more to do it that way. Because what you'd find is the majority of those people getting that help for that rheumatic fever would be Māori, because that's what the average is. But it would cost so much more. And this is coming to you. He's never said it this way, but this is coming to you from a man who wants to have the government spend as little money as possible, whilst kind of pitching this idea that we should treat everyone as an individual. And if we treat everyone as an individual, then when it comes to big decisions, like in the health sector, like in roading, like whatever it is, we got to do a case study for every single individual. Because you know what, even my family, my kids have different needs from me. So you need a study on me, and then one on my two kids are at home, and one on my partner, and one on my boarder. We're going to need to look at everyone like that. So when he says that the averages aren't the best way to do it because it ignores the people who aren't in the average, that's true. I don't want to ignore those people. So now what Mr. Seymour has to do is come out and say how much more he's going to spend on health to be able to provide a bespoke outcome for every individual in New Zealand that needs it. So where's that money coming from? Or, Chewie, is it all smoke and daggers? Is it the shell game? And is it a good soundbite to get through to, as you keep saying, the ratepayers union members to get their vote? All right, team, that's us for another episode. We'll continue these best ofs right the way through till we start going live again on Monday, the 13th of January. If you've enjoyed this show, then you can thank, along with me, our patrons. Our patrons are the ones who are responsible for being able to bring this to you, who have also kept us independent and free from any kind of outside pressure from outside sources. In the week leading up to our break, so in the week leading up to the 20th of December, these patrons joined in those 7 days. Gray, Dr. Nat, Kathleen, Jimmy's Nan, Cezanne Big Q, Caleb Watson, Lance Juverton, Ed Hyde, Howard Vicarage, Doris Queener, Kiwi Bear, Syntax Error, Rena KH, Kerry Moses, Max Power, and Sue Locke. All those people joined in the 7 days leading up to when we went on break. If you have joined since then, you will not see your name in the credits because this is a pre-record. I probably will see your name in the credits in the last week of pre-record because I will update it. I also want to mention David Thompson Rules, who in those 7 days, he also upped his membership. He upped levels from, I think patron to super patron. So thanks to David Thompson for doing that as well. If you've enjoyed what you've seen tonight, if you want to be a part of what we do, if you want to be in the credits that are about to roll, patreon.com/Big Hairy News. Stay safe out there in New Zealand. Remember, driving 5 kilometres per hour slower will only get you there a couple of minutes later. Don't take risks on the roads, and we will see you when we come back live again on the 13th of January as you continue to enjoy the best of the best of the best ofs here in BHU.